it's 2:03. We're gonna call Ms. Burns this time, or we're gonna call before we get started. Anyway, we're starting. Welcome all, glad everybody's here. Buddy, you got it going on? That's just a joke. All right. Ready?
I would like to ask a question before we start,
Okay.
before we call this turn. Are we going to allow anyone in the audience to ask a question? She doesn't have one based on her conversation.
Well, we know.
If we have, what should we do about that? Is it just for us?
Well, that's kind of up to council, because I know that Larry, has had the idea that workshops are basically just for council to discuss
We got
issues.
disagree.
Right, now then we've had discussions about having input from the public at workshops. And I think Rona was developing some
Yes,
alternatives.
it's actually ready for workshop, this coming workshop will have
But I think at this point,
something to look at.
there's no set
Right.
procedures or established procedures that I'm aware of as far as workshops. So I think it'd be up to council what you want to do today as far as having people ask questions or comments.
This is just me and council work. And I really want to listen. I want to keep confusion from either side. I want to hear what she's got to say before I take it.
And any questions that we have?
Done with, well, we're all done, finished, I guess, that comes. Then I don't mind if somebody says something, but until then, I want to be sure, and I'm a little hard of hearing, so, got my earplug today.
You need to sit, you want to swap seats?
No, I think I can, it is. So, let's just hold off the
Okay.
talk until we get.
Until we get through with
Yeah,
our questions.
hang on,
And
we can
then-
vote on
I
it.
think we
So,
need to
you know.
call.
I think that's.
Mayor,
Getting past the.
I think that we need to call, go ahead and make the phone call.
Okay.
We did have them home 2 o'clock, I don't want to run out on another appointment.
Right.
I'm like you, I would like to hear what she has to say.
Well, I do too.
Is that thing as loud as it's good?
I will see.
It's pretty loud when it's on.
All right, what do I need to do? Steve? You want to dial it?
Yeah, I'm just sure you want. Y'all may have some.
Center for Heart Failure, this is Rebecca. How may I help you?
Rebecca, this is Rob Wilmot. I'm the city attorney for the city of Tifton. And
Yes.
we had a call set up with Lee Burns.
With who?
With Lee Burns.
Who is Lee Barr?
This thing ain't working.
I was the
All right.
wrong telephone number. What number did we get?
Let me ask you, is this 686-2840?
No. This is 404-686-7885.
Okay, great. We had the wrong number. Thank you so much.
Okay,
All right,
bye-bye.
bye-bye.
All right,
Stephen, your fingers do not work.
no, I doubt that.
All right, take your time.
Oh, sorry.
Now watch. 1, 4, 6, 8, 6, 2, 8, 4.
Heart failure, Daphne speaking, how may I help you?
What number did we reach?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell me the telephone number when we reached? I think we've got the wrong number.
678, no. Hold on a second. Yeah, 44686. Yeah, 7885.
Okay, thank you.
They got something that's
That-
up
I
there.
want you dialing right now.
That's the right number. It's forwarding to something else though.
Our highly trained have to use that.
All I do is punch the number in.
Call Lee Burns and tell her we have any trouble so that she won't.
That's her number.
Tell her.
He's gonna call her on her Pittsburgh.
Charles says AT&T having trouble with
Oh, really?
it. That affects you.
That,
AT&T's had trouble with that.
Oh, that's AT&T,
Well,
so
there you have it.
all was up on.
Maybe you can call us.
what's that phone number?
What's our phone number here?
I will tell you in just a second. We don't use this one much, so. I don't have
Is this
it.
686-2840? Is this 686-2840? Okay, I'm sorry, the wrong number.
Bet they're getting one.
Must be their AT&T.
Is this part of the shutdown?
Good.
No, we operator had them.
You have shutdown, please?
Let's keep on trying, and I'll send you.
3887. So it should be 391-3887. Area code 229-391-3887.
Area 59.
I can't blank this one.
Yes, we can.
My phone?
They might have been a letter.
Well, unilateral.
If you knew what that was, right?
What, Rob, what organization is she with?
Pardon?
What organization is she with?
Department of Natural Resources.
I'm gonna Google it and see if they got another number we might be getting.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Dial the operator and have her put you through direct.
You're calling,
Yeah. And you even get an operator.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Operator, I'm just blessing words, so all this is called here.
That's right. That was a long time ago. Long, that's
44463-8434, that is her direct line, so this says
Okay, try it again.
Heritage Tourism and Preservation Planner, Lee Burns.
All right, why don't you give that a try?
Okay, hang on, I lost it. 44656-2840.
That's the number we've been dialing.
Okay, grants for local government, let's just call them and get them to transfer us.
Can you just call her from your phone and have her call this phone?
Try, I sent her an email. That's it.
City of Tifton is Stephen.
Hey, this is Lee Burns of the Historic Preservation Division. How are you?
Hey Lee, this is Rob Wilmot. How are you?
Hey, Rob. I'm doing great,
Listen,
thanks.
for whatever reason, we were trying to dial out, and we kept getting the wrong number, even though we were dialing the right
I'm
number.
sorry.
Oh, no problem. I think it's
Okay.
something that's not your problem.
Okay.
Lee, you know, as you know, we got all the council members here, and
Okay.
I think you're familiar with, you know, some of the issues that we're dealing with, and I think that unless when the council members want to ask a direct question, maybe.
Okay.
Lee, let me start off by telling you who we are. I'm Jamie Cater, mayor. We've got
Okay, thank you.
Johnny Terrell, vice mayor.
Okay.
We've got District 1, Mariana Cassine, District 2, Chris Parrott, District 4, Julie Smith. And we're all
Okay.
sitting here. We've got Larry Reiner, our city manager, Rona Martin, and then we've got a few people, citizens in the audience. So
Great, okay.
I want to ask you a few questions and talk, and I'll turn it
Of
over
course.
to our attorney.
Lee, if you would, as you know, some of the questions that have arisen concerning changes to the Historic Preservation Manual had to do with our qualifications as a certified local government. And I think that, you know, in our conversations, I believe you said that changes in the HPC manual would not affect our status as a certified local government, but that you expressed that when council considers changes to the HPC manual, that they do so carefully and with great thought. And
Right.
what I would like you to do is, we never elaborated on that, but maybe you could explain to council basically your views on particularly signage as it relates to the historic district.
Right. Well, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the design guidelines and the Historic District Manual. For me, one of the most important components of a district is its lighting, its signage, and those things, because they definitely contribute to the overall aesthetic. And in our certified local government program, you know, it's a program where we enter into an agreement with the city or county And we base that agreement on certain participatory natures. And one is that we review changes to districts, to design guidelines. Whenever a new district comes up even, we get a 30-day obligatory review period and we can make comments about the changes. For me, what's significant about the Tifton design guidelines is those were funded through a certified local government grant in 1990. We hold these design guidelines for Tifton as really the highest level of design standard in the state. It was a very thought out, well done manual. I even went back through it today and looked at the section on lighting, which is in section E of the document. And where our greatest concern, I'm sorry, page 42. What our greatest concern is that, you know, we have to look at the overall longevity of the district. And whenever we see a commission, a city council, mayor open up these type of documents and start making changes, what our concern is that it sets a precedent for, you know, the entire community, that if they see a component of these design guidelines that they don't either agree with through an economic basis of their business or through an aesthetic of their own personal, you know, opinions, then it really opens up a document that was agreed upon and passed by mayor and council and set as a set of design standards. And not only that, in Tifton's example, but it was funded by the federal government through a certified local government program agreement that we entered to as a city. Now, all that being said, the city has a right to make changes to that document. And when I spoke to Rob right up front, the only thing I stress is that we get an opportunity to see those changes in writing and review those in a 30-day period, and then give our analysis of those changes in writing to mayor and council. So we haven't reviewed those changes yet. We've heard about the changes, and what I looked at when I looked at the document this week is really page 42 of that document, and it outlines the requirements for lighting, and those requirements really, we feel, cover the best interest of protecting the historic district. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the historic district and the setting and the landscape and those type of things with signage.
Lee, I'm going to ask you a question about this 30 days. Is there any way that y'all can expedite that? Because this thing has been going on since April. And we want to move it.
I can expedite it for you in 15 days. Well, the reason I say the 30 days is because that's what the Georgia Historic Preservation Act outlines. And what that means is if I don't respond to you in 30 days, then you all consider that I have no comment. That's what was written into the law. And when you became a certified local government, the most important component of that was that you do everything by the standards of the Georgia Historic Preservation Act. And so as I've said to Rob, that 30 days is just written in there as I'd be happy to expedite it to 15.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Question and answer.
Sure.
Okay. Lee, this is Julie Smith, and I represent District 4, and I just want to say thank you for your time this afternoon, but I have a quick question for you. I know that you work with other communities across the state with regard to their design guidelines. Are there any other communities that you're aware of that are currently going through this same challenge that we're facing here in Tifton with regard to signage and the lighting of the signs, and how have they handled it?
Well, Stone Mountain brought forth changes to theirs this time, probably last summer, and they did send them in for review. We advised them not to make those changes. As I understand it, they did try to mitigate those changes as much as possible and offer different options for signage, like sandwich boards during business hours, no scrolling lit signs, and those type things.
Okay.
I haven't heard what their final decisions were, but as I told Rob in my emails, and I'm sure he shared with you, signage is tough because we do realize the impact on economic development. My concern with Tifton is that you have, to me, such an economically healthy, viable community, and it is so preservation-minded. I would hope in Tifton that we could reach some kind of common ground, mostly because of our involvement with the Mayan Hotel and with your previous city manager who I worked with on that, and then, of course, with Lucretia through Main Street.
Sure.
You have such a fine reputation for preservation in the state, and we even feature Tifton in our economic publications from Don Ripkenner. So I guess for me, working at the state office, I really see the importance of maintaining some kind of solution between, who wants these changes and how we can mitigate the effects to the resources. And what you should know about my job too is, my best interest is to look out for the resources. And that's what my goal is here at the division. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to support the businesses and I don't understand their need to better market their businesses. And so I understand statewide it is a problem, but we'd like to work out a solution with you all.
Right. And we are working on some other avenues to assist the businesses, some complimentary classes on marketing, whatever it is that they need to try to help them any way that we possibly can, because we, I think I can speak for the entire council and staff to say, we do hear the voice of the businesses, but at the same time, we do need to find a happy medium, that we can all live with. So.
And I should say, these changes don't just affect the CLG status of the community, and that it also affects the National Register districts, because I spoke to Rob a little bit about this. Landscape setting is so important. And the thing about Tifton is y'all are so fortunate that you have local districts and National Register districts. And you really are involved in protecting an aesthetic of what you have there. And that's really, signage is such an important component of that. And lighting has so much effect on that. So that's something else I want to stress is, not only is Tifton local districts, but they also have National Register districts as well.
Because of the National Register, would you have any idea how many, I know that there have been several properties within our National Register district that have taken advantage of the federal tax incentives. Would you have any idea what that number is?
For you, I know in the residential we've had a few, but it's the most that I'm aware of are in the commercial, but we can pull those statistics for you.
I think that would be interesting for us to consider, because that's a pretty significant number when you start looking at those incentives.
Yeah, absolutely. The potential is such a significant number, especially as y'all are rehabbing the Mayan Hotel, because what you have to remember is the rehabilitation of the Mayan Hotel is so important, and I stressed this when I was there a few years ago, because it creates a domino effect of positive rehabilitation all throughout the city. And we're just so pleased that the city services are going to remain there, and that it's still going to be a really viable, active component of the city. And I think, from the National Register standpoint and from the local historic district standpoint.
Well, we've had, one of the challenges that we face, Lee, is the city has not always provided the enforcement for the regulations within the district. That was we've recently taken that back under the city umbrella. And during the time that it was outside the city umbrella, we actually shared that with our friends at the county. So it was a joint department that they pretty much oversaw everything, if that's a fair statement. Is that a fair way to say it? Anyway, during that time, the enforcement was not as maybe well handled as we would have liked for it to have been. So as a result of that, there have been things that have been allowed to happen that I think had they come before our HPC today, or if they were going on today, might not be there as a result of enforcement. How do we handle as a community those issues where we may have something that is out there that's not compliant, but it's been there now for several years? It's kind of, sort of become part of our landscape, but how do we handle those past mistakes as we move forward in a proper manner?
Well, I think the goal is to work with the property owners on bringing their properties into compliance from this point forward. I mean, it's not realistic to say that you can go back and punish those that haven't done it. I mean, what you can do is properly educate them on the rewards of doing it right, like taking advantage of the tax incentives, like, protecting the shared aesthetic of the community. I mean, there's ways to work with them. I have a city right now here in the metro area that outsourced their code enforcement to the county, and a lot of mistakes were made. And yes, it's realistic to say that while you can't go back and fix those things, what you have to do is accept it and move forward. And what I advised this city to do was to take an HPC meeting and talk about code enforcement, and talk about whose job and whose responsibility that is, and that it's a shared responsibility, the HBC, the mayor and council, and the code enforcement officers. And in most cities and counties, it carries the same fines as regular planning and zoning violations.
Right.
So once people start to see it psychologically from that perspective, things do get better, I think, and things do progress and change. But as you know, when those sources are out service, sometimes they get away from you, and bringing them back in is an education for everyone involved. But I do think that's something that we could work on together, and really it's best achieved through education.
Right.
And having everyone know what the penalties are under the ordinance. Having the ordinance, on your website, having people who come to your HBC meetings get a copy of that section of the ordinance when they apply for their COA. I think that's important.
Okay.
Well, my question, I'm Mariana, and I represent another area in the city. And my question, though, concerns some LED lighting that we now have in our neighborhood commercial section of the historic district that is on 2 drugstores. And it is, I haven't measured it, but it's, they're LED lights that advertise what they have on sale that week in the drugstore. And we have allowed them, and they are there, and they're not, we have allowed, I know we got the COA for the one in Walgreens. I'm not sure if we.
So under Section E, under your design guidelines, one thing that stood out to me was neon lighting may be appropriate for signage on historically commercial and industrial buildings. Flashing and blinking lights are not appropriate. So in my opinion, moving forward, if there are flashing or blinking lights in the districts, then those should be asked to be removed. And this is under an ordinance, and you can't enforce this ordinance. This will require the backing of youth council and mayor to support this, but it is clearly defined in your historic district manual. And unless they were grandfathered in, meaning they established that sign before this ordinance went into effect and these design guidelines went into effect, then they should have to make those changes. Now, if you as mayor and council decide to change your ordinance to accommodate these business owners or these occupants, that's the decision that you will all have to make. But, again, my concern is that once you make these changes for a component of the community, then all the changes being brought in will have to be considered by a certain part of the community.
All right, I'm interested in towns, and you may know this, you mentioned Stone Mountain, but I'm interested also in knowing about towns near us, comparable in some way, Valdosta, Thomasville, Douglas.
That have addressed these issues?
Yeah, and what they do about it.
I think Thomasville has bidirectional signage. One of the suggestions I gave to Rob was creating better directional signage to the districts. There's the option of creating temporary signage that can be taken in and taken out at different parts of the day. There's monies that can be put into the downtown development owners through the DDA to create maps to, restaurants and things like that. I mean, I'd be happy to research some of that for you. I don't have those ideas, from specific communities available right now, but that'd be something I'd be happy to look into for you all.
I would be really interested in Thomasville particularly, and what they allow in signage in their historic district, particularly their downtown and their neighborhood commercial.
Well, their design guidelines are online at their city website. Valdosta should be posted there too, but I can definitely get those links for you and forward them to Rob. I'd be happy to do that. And then he can give them to mayor and council.
All right, but what you were saying, I think, is that any changes that we consider, we are to get to you, and you can expedite it, and that your opinions return to us in 15 days.
Yes, ma'am. That would be fine. I'd be happy to do that. And, what you should probably expect is that my opinion would follow what I've stated to Rob through email and what I stated now. Not only do we believe that these design guidelines are honestly some of the best that we have, but we also funded those with federal dollars that were cheap because of the CLG status. So, I would need to see the changes, and it would need to relate definitely to Section E there with lighting. I would need to change, would need to see those changes, but I'd also like to see a visual example of what those changes would look like. Meaning, if there were scrolling or blinking lights, what would need to be the dimensions of those? When would those be extinguished? Could they be going all day or all night? Those type of things. And particularly in a residential district, it would rarely ever be acceptable to see flashing or blinking lights. Because not only in Tifton does that protect the district as a local district, but in a residential National Register district, it's even more important to preserve the landscape and the setting. And we have seen districts across the United States lose their National Register listing because the setting was manipulated to the point that the district was no longer cohesive as a residential district. You see what I mean? Is the use of it. It now appeared to be more of a business district by use.
Can you address that same statement, but rather than just residential, if it were a residential professional district, where you've got that little bit of a transition?
Well, the transition, the only thing we can address is literally the boundaries of the district,
Okay.
either local or National Register. But, there's a lot of people who treat transitional out towards the interstate very differently than they treat transitional within their city corridor.
Right.
If you look at towns like Madison, if you look at towns like Valdosta, even newer towns, communities like Fayetteville, where you drive into town and you might see that at the exterior near the interstate, you typically don't see that at the internal corridors of the community.
Right.
Yeah, it's very rare.
Right, okay.
And it's getting to be more rare, and I think that's just coming through, honestly, better planning practices.
Sure.
In general, not even specific to historic preservation, but just the better planning practices. We see a better use of materials. You have even a drugstore that relocates, to the corridors now tends to have more existing materials than the historic district does.
I had asked you to check on the tax credits that have been made available, over the years, kind of a rough estimate. Can you also find out for me how much money, this may have nothing to do with it, but that Tifton has been awarded through the Certified Local Government Grants?
Sure. I know, for an example, I think we've been awarded 5 grants total through the CLG program. Most recently 2 to the Mayan Hotel. One before that for directional signage and wayfinding signage in the local district. But I can find out the CLG money statistics for you.
That would be helpful, I think. Good.
Sure.
Now, what causes a community to lose its CLG status?
Typically, we don't ever really want to decertify local government. And also what you should know is we don't actually do that. The National Park Service would do that. We would write a letter to the National Park Service saying that we believe the city or county was in violation of the agreements which we had signed off on through the program. And 2 of the main components is an adherence to the Georgia Historic Preservation Act. The second being if your commission is fully seated and trained. All commission members must be trained once per 3-year term. If we felt like the community had gotten so far away from the basics, then we could recommend that the National Park Service decertify. And what that would mean is that the community would no longer be eligible for those funds. We only had 2 decertified in Georgia, and one was at their own asking. They decided to form a separate commission that oversaw historic preservation that didn't meet the Georgia Historic Preservation Act, and subsequently they lost, the access to lots of grant money. And the other one was decertified because they repealed all their ordinances.
All right, next question would be similar to that. What causes a community to lose its inclusion on the National Historic Register? Or its district?
Well, for me, what I was mentioning earlier, demolition, obviously. If we looked at a district and more than, a third of the district had been demolished, then that would likely make it suffer, and possibly be delisted. you know, the major compromise of the setting, I can give you an example in Gainesville where we had a property that was formerly a zoned commercial restaurant in a residential National Register district, and they had clear cut and paved the entire landscape up to the door of the house to create parking for the restaurant, and it was no longer contributing to the National Register district and was removed. And so thereunto it was no longer eligible for tax benefits.
Lee, this is Rob Wilmot again. You've addressed the illumination and lighting. One of the things that's been under consideration has to do with banners and what I'm going to call stick signs in the historic district. Is there any guidance that you could give council as far as the appropriateness of banners or stick signs in the historic district?
I mean, I think banners and stick signs should always be seen as temporary solutions, never permanent, because the main thing you're looking at there is maintenance. To me, it's the same thing about a Walmart. If someone comes in and builds you a brand new Walmart and you have your old Walmart that's blighted and decaying, it can be the same way with signage. Any kind of banner would need to be maintained. There would need to be agreements, and those would need to meet, you know, Main Street, you know, standards as well as, you know, preservation, local district related standards. And, you know, I would defer a little bit as well to Main Street to be able to work with the property owners to come up with the best. I would much rather see a banner than a temporary stake sign. Banners can be taken up and removed, and they can be seasonal, and they can be very attractive, and they can carry out a component of the historic nature of the downtown, either by a logo or a festival or something like that of that nature. I just don't think stake signs would really lend to the aesthetic of the district, either commercial or residential.
One of the things that, you know, going back to the banners issue, our thought was to provide for the removal of any banners that become tattered, torn, faded, that type of nature. So one of the things that we have been trying to avoid is going out and putting a clock on any particular banner, just from an enforcement standpoint. So we were kind of looking along the lines of allowing a banner per property, but if that banner became tattered, torn, faded, or whatever, then we could ask it to be removed or replaced.
I think that is a solution to meet halfway and a very good solution. I think Main Street should be involved in that. The HPC should be involved with the design of the banners. But not only that, I think if the property owner can't take an economic, you know, standpoint in maintaining that banner, then the city would need to look at how they can oversee and maintain and support that, and treat it the same way as they do, you know, code enforcement of the nature. That's a responsible. If that's the responsibility of the property owner, then that becomes the responsibility of the property owner. That has to be defined. I think the problem with that is, like I say, defining it very well and making sure that it's maintained.
Right. I do believe that we were also going to provide that a COA would have to also be obtained for a banner.
I think that's a great idea. Absolutely. I think that, you know, it gives an opportunity too for that applicant to come before the commission with a banner, and then if they want to do changes to their building eventually, then they're used to coming before the commission, and it creates a different purpose for the commission, and everyone's aware that signage is a part of local preservation. I think that would be a very positive step.
Okay.
Talk about the stick signs a little bit.
All right. One of the things that we had proposed, I guess naturally the business owners in the historic district, the commercial areas particularly, you know, use these. I guess a better analogy is a political sign, and the idea was that we would permit up to Bert. How much is Bert here? 10 square feet total area for stick signs. I think what I'm hearing you saying is that you don't believe that stick signs or political signs would be appropriate in the historic district.
Yeah, I don't think that's appropriate. I think what you can achieve, that's why I mentioned the sandwich board. Maybe there could be a temporary sandwich board of one that was put out to replace the need for 5.
Okay.
You know, I think 5 is an overkill. I think one sandwich board that has the logo of the banners that could be taken out and put in during business hours, I think that would be a good solution to work towards. You know, when you have 5 possible, you know, you're talking about the trouble in maintaining these banners. Imagine the trouble in maintaining
Stick
stick
signs.
signs.
Well, as I understand,
Yeah, I think that's something that I would just like to see a solution made where you have possibly a sandwich board.
all right, I don't know if council has any other questions, but a couple of things. Would you, we have not been able to locate our agreement. Could you send me a copy of our signed agreement?
Sure. Yeah, I can send you a copy, and they have a copy on file at the Park Service if we don't have one here in our file. But when we go into the agreement, we have 3 copies executed, one for the city, one for us, and one for NPS, so I can get those for you.
All right, Lee, and then, once council has come up with what they believe they want to do, and we submit this to you for your review, at that point in time, of course, you would tell us what your thoughts are about the changes. Then would you also be providing council with some options, as you call ways to mitigate what they want to do by other means?
Absolutely, we can provide alternatives, and either I'll provide them visually by including appropriate attached design guidelines, or I'll state what the alternatives were. You know, like I'll reemphasize the use of a sandwich board versus the staking of 5 signs. And then again, you know, this letter will state our input, our opinion, in an advisory nature. But again, I want to stress that, you know, the beauty of the Georgia Historic Preservation Act is that it gives the city and the county the ability to make these decisions for themselves, and they can still make these changes. But I guess for me, what it will really say is, here's some alternatives. Let's maybe explore these before we head down a path that creates more changes to follow.
Okay. Does anyone have any more questions?
Council doesn't have any, I have one.
I have
Or
one
two.
today. It's not related to this, Lee. Lee, you and I have, this is Jamie, the mayor. We have a mutual friend, I think maybe called you, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago about the Colony Bank and the old ice.
Which building?
The Colony Bank wanted to put a building on the old ice.
Yes,
rink
in the old
on
ice house.
2nd. And I believe the word that I got back was that settle down, it's going forward, it's moving forward. Is that still your perception of that?
Well, I'll be honest with you, that's an area of our office that is handled through the environmental review process. I advise the police to contact Betsy Shirk, who's the head of our environmental unit, and anything directly related to that building would need to go to her, and I'd be happy to check on it and see where the progress is.
I wish you would, just call me directly, let me give you
Yeah, I'd be
my
happy
number,
to check
please.
on that.
My number is 229
Okay?
326 3111. And I'd kind
11.
of like to know where it's headed. I'm sure.
Sure, and I'll be
Might
honest
pull
with
out.
you, unfortunately, because of the federal shutdown, if it
Oh,
was in
that's
progress,
right.
then it obviously is frozen.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, but I will check with, you know, unfortunately, I can't even access the Park Service website
Yeah.
right now, it's
Yeah,
shut
that's
down.
right. That's right.
All the websites are shut down.
That's
So
right.
any of their tracking systems, even there, would be shut down at this point.
You're right, Lee. You're right, thank you.
Yeah, but I will speak with her and let her know that, you know, that you're interested in knowing where things are, and as
Right.
soon as things come back up, and I hope this shutdown will end this week, and, you know, we can all work on these federal projects again.
Yeah, I called the president the other day, and he said he didn't know who I was. I couldn't get anywhere with it.
He didn't know about you from Tifton.
That's right, who am I? Lee, you have been very informative, very kind. I'm gonna give you a chance, Larry. And I think all 5 of us elected officials, does anybody else want to say anything before we turn it over to Larry?
Well, I had some of the same questions Mary Ann had, so I got mine answered.
Okay, that was
Okay,
Chris
great.
Barrett, District 2. He said he got his answered.
Great.
Mariana.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to the Mayan Hotel reopening, and I'm
We are
so
too.
proud of the city's efforts. I really am.
Yeah, we're gonna get an attaboy for that, and if we do the wrong thing here, we're get that off.
It'll all equal out
We did-
somewhere.
I don't know if it'll equal or not. We're gonna try to
Yeah,
do the
well,
right thing here.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful project, and you know, again, I applaud Tifton for all their work, and I think this is something we can come to some middle ground and help the business owners, but also protect the aesthetic of the historic community, which is so important to the economic development long term of Tifton.
Long term is right, Lee. Now, Miss Mariana has another question for you.
Okay.
Right, the webpage, some webpage that the state maintains, talking about the CLGs, you talk about training that is required for the CLG, and review that with me. Every year the city
Okay.
sends someone?
It's not every year. What happens is, we always have, new members have to be trained. We like to see new members of the HPC trained initially. But during their 3-year term, which is what they're appointed through the ordinance, they have to attend one training for a 3-year term. So it's actually once per 3 years.
And what happens if they don't?
Well, I'd love to say that I have a master list and we go down it and we don't check off names, but what we do is we try to work with you all to get in compliance. Now, we had one in Valdosta 2 springs ago, and most of your commission was there, and they were very involved and very responsive, and we haven't typically had a problem with Tifton not sending people to training. I know budgets are extremely tight. I know it's difficult. We will have another training in Athens in April 11th and 12th. And anybody who hasn't been trained, we'd love to have them join us then. But we offer scholarships as well, and we try to get as many of our statewide HPC members to training as we can. But no, we're not. We kind of really want the city to really look at maintaining that, because it only serves the HPC well. And not only should they come, but code enforcement officers should come. Anybody who works at the HPC, anybody who staffs it, it's very important for a staff person to attend.
Right.
But that's pretty much where it is. And you can go on our website and look.
Right.
And I should also mention that we have a YouTube presentation about the CLG program on our website at georgiashippo.org. And anybody on the council can view that. It's about 20 minutes. And it goes through the entire program and its components.
Well, I would encourage you and all of state government, as I leave this commission soon, to invest in online training, and make things available online.
Well, we do have some online trainings, but, one of the things that we constantly hear from our commission members around the state is they really want to have face-to-face interactions with other commission members. They want to meet attorneys that are specifically trained to talk about historic preservation. They also need to learn architectural techniques and updates. So while we understand the need for online training, there's one of the in 86 CLG communities. So in those ways, that's really sometimes the only way that I get to meet all of those people. And we really see the usefulness, just like Gaza sees it for zoning administrators. We see the use to have face-to-face interactions and all get the same information out at the same time that's both up to date. And if you look at the cost of it, it's $125 per person. But you have some of the most, well-known experts on preservation in the country at these sessions and trainings. And so, this is what we hear from our audience, which are mostly these members, that they like these on-site face-to-face trainings. But we do have some online options, and they're all there on our YouTube channel, and they can be viewed. And I would encourage, Mayor and Council, if they weren't really aware of the CLG program before the conversations occurred about the signing, that maybe, they spend some time, and we have a wonderful tax credit program training on the YouTube channel as well, where they can familiarize themselves with the tax credits.
Okay, if that's all, then we're gonna turn it over to our city manager, Mr. Larry Reiner. Lee, he wanted to
All
ask you
right.
a question or say something.
Thank you, Mayor. Lee, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thanks.
And I'm gonna be very brief. Is there training for the business people and residents that are in a historic district that's available through any government program other than that?
Sure. We have a statewide preservation conference once a year. It's for anyone interested in preservation as it relates to economic development, tax incentives, environmental review. and it's typically in the spring of each year. We will not have it this year because the National Trust for Historic Preservation will have their conference in Savannah, but we will have one in the spring of 2015. And again, all those trainings that I mentioned that are available, they're available to the property owners and to everyone through those online trainings through our website. There's other opportunities for Main Street, which Lucretia is definitely aware of. Lucretia is one of our best Main Street managers in the state. I mean, she's done wonderful things with economic development. She sits on the Georgia Downtown Association board with me, and Lucretia has wonderful resources for all of those kinds of things. So I would encourage Main Street to really be involved in that too.
Amen.
And the last request I have is that we have utilized, I say we, the business owners in downtown Tifton have utilized the Opportunity Zone, the Enterprise Zone, and state and federal tax credits to a great extent to make renovations and to buildings downtown and businesses. And in some cases, those would not have been possible without these federal, state, and tax credits and these other two Opportunity and Enterprise Zones that we have available for them. So I would request, if at all possible, when you do a review of any changes that we might want to make to the guidelines, could you make a comment specifically in your reply as to whether or not this will impact your ability to get federal, state, or tax credits, or will it impact the Opportunity and Enterprise Zone?
Well, all federal programs, whether they're opportunity, there's a set of guidelines called the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, and those are guidelines that are approved for HUD programs, for Park Service programs, anything that would be applying CDBG for rehabilitation. If they use those standards, then they would be approved. I think what the problem becomes sometimes is people want to use certain standards for certain projects, and they get the projects confused and they get the programs confused. CDBG, empowerment zones, opportunity zones, those are all DCA programs. The only program federal that we execute for economic is the tax incentives. And if you do use the tax incentives and you follow the Secretary of the Interior standards, then they should meet the qualifications of those programs. Even this upcoming bank project at the old ice house, any CDBG projects that y'all done in Tifton. So I'd be happy to state that in the letter. That's not a problem at all.
Thank you.
Okay, Lee, I believe we're done. And look, I think we've made some very good time here, Marianne.
Yeah, I think so too. Absolutely. And I think I think there's no doubt that everybody wants to help the property owners and the business owners, and anything we can do to help that. I just want to encourage that we all just keep communicating about it, and I'll be happy to expedite the review.
Well, Lee, thank you, and I want to say this. I'm shooting a left curve here in my council, but we've got some people in the audience. Lee, if you had a few more minutes, and if the council,
of course,
you don't want to do that. I thought one person from each side, if they want to say something, ask Lee something. Is that okay with the council?
Sure.
I'm with me. I think that'd be a good idea.
And if you will, keep it brief, whoever answers.
Al, you got any questions?
Well, more or less just,
This is Hal Maxley. He's a commercial business owner. Invested some money downtown. He's had some questions. Hal?
Of course.
the only comment I guess that I would make, Lee, is that while my wife and I already own, well, we've got two now, businesses or buildings that are in the historic district, and and we own a spa, and what we're trying to do is to be able to advertise specials or anything of that nature. The sign that we're talking about as far as LED sign is a 6-foot sign, 6 square feet, which is that makes it a very tiny sign. And the only way that you would be able to get any mileage out of that sign would be for that sign to be able to scroll or move. because if you do it where it changes, you're not gonna be able to get your message across. And the other comment would be, is that aesthetically, I don't think you'll find anybody that owns any building in the historic district that is against the building itself being historically, the facade of it being historically sound and like it was back in the day whenever it was first built. The only thing I would say about signage is I just really don't believe that is going to contribute in a negative way to the looks of the historic district and for the feeling of the historic district, because we live in 2013 and there's all types of things that are going to be coming down the road, and we need to go ahead and start paving a way for those things to be blended in the historic district. That's the comment I guess I would make.
Okay, well, I appreciate your opinion. I mean, I understand your need for the visibility of the signage and the intensity of the lighting. I guess my only concern is that these were design standards that were adhered to and passed by your mayor and council. They served the community, it appears, for quite a while. And again, you know, we'd love to work on mediating something where you have temporary signage that can stand out and bring in business owners. But again, providing a variance of one lit sign, it leads to lots of inundation of other lit scrolling signs. And the design guidelines, which is what mayor and council enacted as the way that the design should take process in the district, that's really the best thing to protect the overall community. So again, I appreciate your opinion and I understand it. But again, the way that I'm speaking to this purely is from protecting the historic resource and the historic character and integrity of the district.
I would just like to, the only other thing I'd like to say is that was 23 years ago, and that we've had a lot of change in the last 23 years, and I expect there to be a lot more changes in the next 23 years.
Anybody from over here, Charles, Eloise, Diane? Y'all want to ask her anything? This will be Miss Eloise Starr. They live in the historic district. And, Lee, thank you for doing this. Eloise is making her way over here.
Of course. Well, I appreciate you saving me the 3-hour drive to Tifton.
Amen.
I have just a question a little bit differently. All the signs that you're talking about are basically exterior signs. And I was curious about interior signs displayed in windows.
Okay, so an interior sign in a window, if it still has the same concept of the scrolling nature and the internal lighting, if you look at the design guidelines, it addresses internal lighting as well. And so while you can address the changes of the architecture, what you can address are the effects of that signage on the outside. And I think if you look at that page 42, if you go back to the design guidelines, it talks about what is allowed there. And it may address internal signage. And it should be addressed, because internal signage with that much lighting and with that scrolling can cause effects as well.
Bert? You need to make a comment? Yes, sir.
If that is not addressed, I don't think on page 42.
It is not, because our code enforcement has to stop it. You can have one in the window.
Lee, this is Rob again. I've looked at this, and I do not believe that the manual addresses interior signs.
Okay, is it addressed under regular planning and zoning? I think it probably is. Usually it defaults to how signage is for the interior, to how it's handled through planning and zoning. Because as you know, the Georgia Historic Preservation Act doesn't oversee the interior use of a building.
Right.
It sees the exterior. So whatever it would default to planning and zoning. But I'm sure planning and zoning would say that maybe it does, and I don't have your ordinance in front of me, that there's certain times that those lights can be turned on and there's certain times they cannot. There's a certain type of wattage they can use, there's a certain type they cannot. And, you know, I would default back to the planning commission to make those decisions.
Yeah, we just recently adopted our land development code, and our signage portion of the LDC is modeled after the GMA model sign ordinance. And I do not believe it addresses interior signage. But we'll take a look at that.
Okay.
And our planning and zoning commission at the
Thank
last
y'all.
meeting has just asked
We'll look at
us to
that.
look at that.
Right.
So, they want us to look at that. Interior signage.
I think that would fall under, if you looked at the signage under minimizing the use of exterior lighting by only accenting, you could look at this number 4. It says choose light fixtures that are appropriate for the building site and streetscape in terms of style, scale, and intensity of illumination. I'm sure there's probably something in the planning code that talks about the intensity of illumination. But again, that's something for planning and zoning to look at.
I agree.
I had one more question. That I
No,
thought
can't
of.
ask you more questions, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mary Ann. Mary Ann has a question.
Okay.
We were considering allowing, what is it now, not halo lighting, but the lights with the letters
Channel-
are cut out.
channel.
Channel lighting. And that would be a change from our historic manual. What do you think about channel lighting?
Counter lighting? I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Channel, CHANNEL, when like the letters of,
The background is dark, but all you see, the only thing that's lit is the letters.
So again, any changes like that would fall under page 42 and, minimize the use of exterior lighting. I wouldn't think there would be a problem with accenting, but again, the thing that it outlines as the most important here is that flashing and blinking lights are not appropriate. I mean, I think there's ways to mitigate the situations with the other forms, but when you have a set of design guidelines that tells you straight out what's inappropriate, I think the other things can really be looked at to mitigate the effects of it, and that's usually through bulb brightness and illumination.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
Again, I would prefer that all this be outlined in writing, so I can respond to it
Sure,
as official record as well.
Yeah, Lee,
If that question needs to be, if it's addressed in the changes, in the proposed changes, then I'll directly respond to it in that letter.
Absolutely. What we'll do, I will outline to you in the letter all the proposed changes, and then, such as if a proposed change is channel lighting, I'll provide you with an example of that. We'll try to give you examples of what we are thinking about. That way you'll have a picture to go with what, in an attempt to, a picture's worth 1,000 words, as they say.
Right.
So, but certainly what I intend on doing, once council has made a determination about the changes they'd like to make, I will put those in writing, hopefully with examples, get that up to you, and then if we get that turnaround time, that'll give us some time to try to work through this in a quick manner. I said, as the mayor indicated, this.
I appreciate that, because, as we talk in this conference call, and even, and I hear the concerns, these are all hypotheticals until I see, the actual ample examples, and I appreciate the patience of you all and the constituents and me not being there in person.
Well, we appreciate it, Lee. We were, as the mayor said, this has been quite an issue for some time, and, both the property owners and the business owners have met several times trying to work out a solution, but we appreciate your help.
Sure.
Okay?
Lee?
All right.
Don't see any more questions, and you didn't leave anybody mad, so I think we're all
Okay, well, that's good. And I'd love to come down at any point and do a public information meeting if I can ever be of help and work with Lucretia again in Main Street, and you just let us know. But I will respond within 15 days, and we'll move forward from there.
Thank you for all you do, Lee. We
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Mayor. Thank you, Rob and Council. I appreciate it, and have a great day.
All right, you too.
You too. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
This one.
Okay, just a minute.
You want me to hit it again?
Hit him again.
Okay, so now we can open up a conversation about this. Our next is, once we get this done, then the next thing is at the workshop. And we really jump on this at the workshop. That email I sent you haven't seen yet, addresses this. So there's several people on both sides that want to see you still here when this decision is made. So I'm trying to get this thing moving forward. I sent you the email on it.
I haven't,
And, so we can talk now, then we can move to the workshop. Are you stopping?
No, I was waiting. I thought you fixing to dismiss us or something, I have one more thing to do.
Sure.
I don't remember. None already happened.
I changed my
emails.
brain thought, so it's
I have
okay.
a
Go
couple
ahead.
things.
Good time.
Number one, Bert Crow sent me a recommendation yesterday afternoon about 3, which I've looked at, and it may be, a reasonable recommendation that will solve the majority of these problems. Not that we need to get into discussion about it today, but if it's okay, I'd like to go ahead and pass that out to you all and let you look at it and see if that's something that you would like to consider, and as to what our next step is. If y'all can give staff some kind of guidance at the workshop so that we can package this thing up and send it up to Lee, I think that's where we need to
Just
go.
gotta go to Lee before we can go back to the P and C, right?
Well, that's the next thing.
And so
I'll defer to
the
Mr.
P and C
Plummer.
could have a special meeting if
Yes.
they would.
We can call a special meeting and planning and zoning, but we require 7 days to post the meeting prior to it.
Okay.
Well, I would be very interested in Bert's proposal.
Me too.
Can he come up and summarize it for you real quick?
Sure.
Well, Lord, thank you.
Is that okay with everybody?
While he's coming up, she had mentioned several times we need to have Main Street involved, and Main Street has resources and all that.
Yeah.
Do we need to bring the DDA and the Main Street program into this, or yes, no, baby? She just mentioned Main Street so many
She-
times,
yeah,
I know we haven't had
yeah.
Lucretia
She
involved.
and Lucretia work real close together. Lucretia gets a lot of grants.
Right, I
She's
know,
up with it
yeah.
and everything. Now, I think this might be convoluted to get DDA, but that's my opinion.
Yeah.
For y'all understand that?
Well, she did say that it was,
Yeah, I mean, she just mentioned Lucretia several times and having
Yeah,
her.
well, I don't mind
on that, so
Lucretia with
I
it,
just
but I
wondered.
thought you meant the whole DDA.
Well, maybe not the biggest, that's
Yes, sir. Of course, keep in mind that I read this prior to hearing what the lady had to say, so.
You drinking when you write? That's on your time.
No, sir, I probably wish I would have been. but I wasn't. I'm sorry. So, basically what I did is just try to review some of the occurrences, and just to cut it short and be quick as I possibly can. We basically still want to keep in mind that we try to keep the integrity of the historic district while allowing business throughout our city, both in and outside, to be able to function and flourish. Also, we went through the process of citizen input, staff review. We've gone through all the different levels, planning and zoning, such as that. And basically, I came up with just a list. It's listed 1 through 4. And basically, it says there was a request made to allowance of some banners and stick tag signage in the historic district, which are currently not allowed. An equitable agreement was found between the citizens from citizen input and staff review during the period. It was for the 24 square feet as the banner, 5 stick signs, 10 square feet. That could be adjusted if you wanted to make the sandwich sign instead of, that's something that could be considered. We don't have a problem with our department regulating the quality of signs, as you well know. We have no problem until they take them down, swap them out. That's part of what we do. You have that on our staff. Second issue was discussed was internally lit signs, multi-message signs within the historic district. Currently, our guideline does not allow it at all, period. They're already there. We know that. We talked about that now. Currently, in the historic district, the multi-message signs that are there don't scroll. They change, and that's all. I don't know if you noticed that, but I've checked. I've talked with them. That's all
say
they
that
do.
again.
They do not scroll
Where?
at Walgreens or CVS. They change.
Oh, I didn't know that. I would call them scrolling.
Well, scrolling is movement, and I don't think I've ever seen them scroll. And I stood there and watched them for hours on end.
Well, I'm glad to know that.
But that's kind of one of the limitations that the historic agreed with when we were talking, and the community agreed at that. Within the historic district, I'm talking now. Okay, just historic. We're not into the rest of the city yet.
Right.
So, with that being said, if you decide to go in that direction, or whatever direction you decide, our recommendation to staff still stands at this. Multi-message signs, and I agree, do need to be addressed. Absolutely. There's no reason not to. When I say multi-message, that's anything that deals with basically LED, video type signs, or anything that may come in the future. We might as well agree to deal with them now. And the way to deal with them is to deal with them as a separate type of signage. I.e., right now we deal with billboards. We deal with stanchion or pole type signs. We deal with banners. We deal with different types of signs. We need to make a category, and Rob and I have already discussed this. We've researched it to show multi-message signage as a set, so that it's not mixed up with all other signage, because it's different. It's a different animal, okay? And now I'm kind of shifting over to all over the city, because right now, the way our ordinance reads is absolutely true. It's Mary Ann had shared with us, that we have no flashing, blinking. I mean, it's just what it says. No flashing, blinking, strobing, etc. And that is in contradiction to what a LED sign does. We know that. We knew that from the beginning. We just decided to take one bite at a time, okay? So with that being said, we've allowed them within the rest of the city, not the store, but the rest of the city. And really what it comes down to is, what we would recommend is that to separate that group of signs out. In other words, you'd have another category in the chapter 7 that says multi-message signage. And where it says flashing, blinking, strobing, color changing, it would say, with the exception of, you know, multi-message signs. And then down below, it would describe multi-message signs, and then that would leave council, along with the recommendations of staff, the lead way to develop whatever you chose to for LED signs. Now, I just left a meeting before I came down here with a developer here who develops all through town, who's from out of town, and who asked me, what are y'all gonna do with it? I said, I don't know, but I said, this is the situation. You know, I hope, and I was talking about from a staff standpoint, that we're able to come to some agreement with these flashing, scrolling, blinking, because if we change all of that in our ordinance, that 717A, we take that out, then anything can flash, scroll, or blink. Anywhere that there's a sign. You could have a residential sign, somebody had as a legal sign, that flash, blink, or scroll. If you take that out, they could. I'm just letting you know. So to take that out is kind of like tearing the guts out of the sign ordinance, to be honest with you. But the way to do it is to leave that in place, that it kind of mainly occur fluorescent and incandescent, which is your normal type of signage. Put your electronic signs, i.e. your multi-message signs, in a different category. Regulate them separately, okay? And the historic district has always been a special district. There's always been different. Every type of sign is regulated different in the historic district than it is anywhere else in town. Every sign there. Banners are different. Stick signs are different. You know, every sign is different. Pole signs are different. It's different. And it's for that reason, is what the lady was explaining to y'all. It's a district that's for preservation. So I respect that. Outside, I do believe that LEDs, i.e., you know, message signs, whatever you want to call it, electronic, need to be allowed to be used more. I mean, than just not at all, or just changing the sign. Okay, I agree with that. But we as staff need to know what the consensus is from the community. This gentleman here, and I'll tell you straight up, was from Williams Investment, big company here that invests a lot through the city. And his comment was, I understand fully what you're saying, we should be able to use them, but we don't want things to get gaudy. And that was his comment to me. And I've heard that over and over. And I've looked up the research, and it does say if we just go for free-for-all, then it's going to be a deterrent to development. We're on a good roll of development. I just turned in 21. I've got about 4 more projects that are in the works or are going to be over the next 6 months. We want to keep that going. These are all commercial now, okay, not to mention residential. We don't want to interfere with that. We're able to take what we have now, sit down and work with all of our customers that come in and work out signage for them, and they're usually satisfied. Okay, I mean, we had no trouble with Publix, we had no trouble with Olive Garden, we've had no trouble with TJ Maxx. They've all come in and been very satisfied with what we've had. We want to keep that. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. But basically, the bottom line is outside the district, you know, we feel like that we need to separate that out in our ordinance, that'd be in chapter 7. And then really, from our input from y'all, decide whether we want to. I mean, personally, from my department, I understand scrolling. You know, that's not a deterrent to traffic. It's not, you know, blinking and carrying over. I understand changing. I'm not sure that I understand strobing. You see what I'm saying? I'm not sure I understand flashing, you know, blinking. You know, that may be a bit much, but that's just from a development standpoint. That's not from, you know, I mean, I've heard both sides. But I think they need to be able to use their signs, but I think they need to be just like any other sign. There needs to be limitations on what they can and can't do. Now that has to really be a determination of council, not of staff. We give our input, but we can't necessarily come up with what your constituents feel would be the best from a business standpoint or a community standpoint.
Well, let me ask you a
Yes,
question. And what you're talking about here, would that still, you address multiple message signage, but would that still eliminate scrolling?
Well, what you would do is you would be able to go into that multi-message sign category and allow it to scroll at so many letters per second or minute or whatever. You could put that in there under that category, multi-message signage, and set it at a pace that didn't interfere with traffic, it didn't interfere with the neighbors, you know, it didn't interfere with other businesses, and still allow the use of the sign for what it's designed to be used for, okay? Or message to change. You know, we first said 10 seconds change. We dropped it back down to 5 so you could get more message on there. That was more, 5 to 8 is what we found to be kind of a national average for changing, you know, change. Scrolling is very common. I mean, and it's not necessarily disruptive in my opinion. That's my opinion. Now, if you get a sign that begins to change colors and flash, and that could be an issue. You know, it could be an issue with traffic. You see both sides of the coins, you see some issues, but you know, we'd be able to allow those signs to be used, but just not to the most ultimate, because you can make a sign look like Las Vegas. I mean, if you ride down the strip, Las Vegas is one big LED. And they literally can show a picture up in the sky. You know, I mean, it's amazing things on TV. I've never seen it.
We
But,
reduce these to only 6 square feet.
well, no, sir, that's in the historic district. In the rest of the city, within the historic district, that's true. That is what was being requested in the historic district, okay? And that was agreed between both parties. Outside the historic district, they can be up to the size of any other sign as long as they don't go over their square footage. So if they had 100 square foot of sign, they could have up to, say we allowed a 90-foot stanchion sign, they could put a LED 90-foot square foot sign on top of a pole, and it's allowable outside the historic district. I mean, it's allowable now. I just approved one for the Peanut Commission that's going to be 24 square feet, and I approved it this week because it's a viable sign in our ordinance. We can allow them. It's just we've never had regulation as to how to regulate the use of them, if that makes sense. It's kind of new ground, okay? You know, fairly new anyway.
And that'd be under the multi-message sign?
Yes, sir.
It'd be a whole category
Yes, sir.
to itself?
Absolutely, just like billboards are, or just like
Yeah.
stanchion signs are, or monument signs are a different category. They all fall into their wall signs are a different category. We have the categories already. We just need to set this in a category itself.
We did that.
Exempt it from, right, and exempt it from the flashing, blinking strobing, so we can then in turn put in what we choose as a city to put in to allow our businesses to use them. But it is something we're going to have to address because, as Mr. Powell said here, it's coming, and it's coming quick. And as soon as we regulate something, we're going to have something else new because electronics is endless. You know that. I mean, it's coming, and we don't need to stop our use of that. We have a bunch of them anyway. UGA has them, all the new restaurants have them, and they're nice. It's just how far do you want to let them go? You know, I mean, they could be technically showing full video on them, and do you want that? That's a choice that has to be made, a decision that has to be made. But it's very manageable, even with the consideration of historic without. See, the thing with the historic department, division group, city-wide in this historic district, is that the parties that we met with and talked with on multiple occasions, and you were there, so we came to a pretty good understanding of what everybody felt was fair. I mean, with some exceptions, but reasonable. And I'm not saying everybody was happy, but it was a reasonable, and I say reasonable, compromise. It did allow for an LED or a backlit sign. That's still a matter of question. At the same time, like you mentioned, not to bring this up, but you mentioned the interior lights that you mentioned, Ms. Stiers. That has already come up from staff and from the planning and zoning. It's something we're going to have to look at. It's the next bite. If you understand it, we're going to have to look into it. I've already talked to Rob about it. We're going to start looking at the legal. As soon as we get through this, that's the next thing on the next thing on your list. So, you know, these are things we're going to work on one at a time, if you know what I'm saying. But here, this to me is something that is doable. It's very reasonable. This could be prepared and ready. In fact, basically, for all practical purposes, is. And be ready for you to see, I think, by a workshop, would it not, Rob? And we probably pull that off and make a decision and get it to the lady from Atlanta as soon as possible. and get it back to us, DNR. I mean, what would be the ordinance changes? That's what she wants to see, a review of the ordinance changes, and get her feedback on it, and then at least know what their input is and see how it would affect, because they may have such, I heard a change about the sandwich board sign instead of the stick signs. That's something to consider. That's a real consideration. We already have a means for sandwich board signs. We have that in our ordinance. We allow those, at least in the commercial downtown district.
18 by 3 feet.
3 feet tall, 18 wide, but it's only in the CD zone. We don't allow them throughout the commercial area, so that might be something to consider, to widen that out a little bit and use that as a viable type of sign. It's definitely more viable within the historic district than would be stick signs. Not that I'm against either one, I'm just telling you, you see that more common when you're looking at the 400 different ordinances for historical districts that I've probably looked at over the last 6 months.
Lee seemed to be pretty shocked that we would put that many in the, call them the stick sign or the flag. Seemed like that might have been a little too many to do.
Well, I mean, granted, her comment to me, I agree with, is that was personally or staff-wise, I agree with her. I think that was a lot, but that was one of the things that was kind of the compromise. In fact, when we went to the HPC with it, they had less problem with the banner than they did with the stick signs. They had issues with the stick signs, which is what you're talking about. The stick in the ground.
Stick in the ground, they flap like this.
They did.
Might be like
That's
that.
they're a stick type sign.
So we
Political
still
sign,
do
you know.
Six signs.
Well, 5. You can do 5 up to 10 square feet because they're about 2 feet apart. Think about your campaign signs. That's what they are. And that was the
Well,
compromise
these
that
aren't
came.
tall
No,
poles.
sir.
That's
No, sir.
considered a banner.
That's considered a banner. They're allowed one of those up to 20.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
It's a vertical banner.
What are the stick signs?
stick
Like your
signs. You know
political
your
sign.
political signs when it said vote for Jamie Cater?
Well, that's what you said.
That's right. Yes, sir.
All right.
And that's what those are. And, you know, her comment was you may want to consider doing like they do downtown, where they use the sandwich type board signs,
Yeah.
which is
5
very
of those
important.
in 10 feet.
That's a lot of
You know,
signs.
I think what she said about the sandwich board signs in lieu of the stick signs, political signs, because she was saying, you know, you put the sandwich board signs out during the day and then you take them in and close the
That's right.
business.
It's easier to carry.
And, well, that does a lot. It helps protect the integrity of the historic district. You don't go down Love Avenue and see, you know, 5 of these 2 by 10,
Right.
however many square
Right.
foot signs there are out there in the yard. They set their sandwich board sign out during the day. We use Mary Queen, for example.
That's right.
She set her sandwich board sign out during the day, when she was ready to go home, now she just pulls it back in.
Well, there are several businesses that currently use those. Robert's Jewelers,
That's
on the
right.
corner of Second and
I've got 2 customers.
yeah, and
And
they are
downtown.
effective.
Well, that's
Yeah.
in the CD district.
Right, and
Yeah.
right now.
Oh,
it
you're talking
is-
about outside, but I'm
yeah,
just using that as an
Right now,
example.
the LDC does limit those to the CD districts,
Right.
commercial downtown.
Right.
It would be very simple to open that up to any commercial district, for example. And, or even if you decided to do RP, you could list them as the types of zones that would allow for a type of signage that would be a temporary, quote-unquote, type of signage that would be easy to manage. And again, if you notice at the very top of the first sheet, it must be enforceable or it's doing us any no good. I mean, none of us do
Yeah.
it if I can't help you with that part. And I say this to compliment my staff. Y'all may not realize that you're pretty fortunate to have a staff that we're on top of this. I mean, you know, we try to stay on this as much as we can to make sure that we're as fair and equal and to make sure that we do have things going correctly in the historic district and, you know, people not working without permits or COAs or whatever it may be. And sometimes that does recall, you know, I'm sure y'all get calls, but that is part of the process of making sure everybody's on the same playing field. So, any other questions about, I mean, this is a basic write-up. It was before I heard this conversation. I would probably changed a couple of things had I heard this first, but, you know, I didn't have that option, so.
Well, I'm still concerned about our signs in the land development code and what we would say that.
What if,
All right,
How that would
which,
be
on the blinking, flashing, strobing, what you would say is that illumination, it would stay in there basically, and then do an exception to multi-message signage. And then you would come down and actually have a category that's about multi-message signage, illumination, and it would actually be a category just like billboards or whatever the case.
That seems contradictory. You
Well-
leave that sentence in there, and then you adjust it by exception.
No, sir, what it would do is it would say, with the exception of this type of signage. That is a special type of signage. It's a different type of signage than what we've ever had that verbiage right there has been in ordinances. It's been in our ordinance since it was established that I can find back in the 80s. It's been in across the nation. You find that verbiage in signage with illumination because most people don't want flashing, blinking, strobing lights. I mean, they don't want it. And so that's you find it in the state of Georgia. That's what GEMA says. If you go to different states that have their own commissions that help with such things, their samples will say that. And the reason is, and I agree, that's mostly related to old school types of lighting, okay? Incandescent lighting, fluorescent type lighting. But there's no reason, I mean, that's like, so we have exceptions throughout this thing. You know, such and such is allowed with the exception of whatever. And I mean, it's throughout, it's.
And I think if you recall what Lee was saying earlier, that flash, I mean, she was just jumping right on that one, flash, strobe, blinking, strobe, and all that. But I think by maybe incorporating what Bert's talking about, do the exception. And then when you get down to multi-message signs, you can regulate that particular
Segment.
genre of signs, if you will, just like we do the billboard. I think that's probably the most simplistic way to handle that.
It's really a timing thing. You know, you're gonna have, rather than blinking, there'll be a multi-message sign that'll change the face and then maybe change again. So it's not blinking, but yet the multi-message sign changes the message, you know, every 5 seconds.
Just like the billboard out there on I-75.
Right.
Yeah.
Or scroll.
Or scroll. Scroll is the same thing, because you can set a face on the scroll. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not trying to take away or add to, but you can set a pace for a scroll, just like you can.
Honestly, let me tell you, this is all we wanted to begin with. All we wanted, with a little small sign like we've got, all we wanted to do was scroll. We don't want it to blink, flash, and all that other mess. All we want to do is put the sign out there.
Yeah, but what you're saying, what I heard her say, or heard somebody you say, that like the CVS sign, the Walgreens sign are not scrolling.
Not
CVS sign does have one underneath it.
It does.
They do have one
It does
underneath
have
it
one
that does
underneath
scroll, and
does
it
scroll.
does flash.
Small one under there.
Yes.
And that's the kind of thing that could be set separate under the HPC guidelines. They're already there, if you understand what I'm saying. We may not like to admit this, and I know that the mayor has reminded me like everything to be the same everywhere, but it's not. I mean, that is a special district. It's no different than residential commercial. And this is a situation to where you're looking at a district that has its guidelines. And look, if I lived there, I'd want those to be honored. They're different than you live in a subdivision somewhere that you want it to be honored. So, you know, that's what they're saying. That's what I hear them saying when I meet with them monthly or multi-monthly times a month. But the thing is that, you know, we can regulate signage within a historic district under the historic guidelines. That's what she's here to help us with, the lady y'all just talked with. That's not a problem. That's almost a separate issue, if you know what I'm saying.
What you just said, I want to look at Frank's account. I did say, yes, it's different. And yes, the historical district is different. I wouldn't knock it. It may sound like, I mean, you don't have the whole content there. I was simply saying it is different. We do have to treat it different. We do have to be fair. That's what they just said.
That's right. Absolutely.
And so, you know.
I don't think you'll find anybody that argues.
It would be nice if it could all be the same. It'd be nice and easy
Yeah,
for me.
yeah.
I admit that, but it's
You
not. I mean,
brought-
and that's it.
You brought me over to that. I
You know,
can't.
and,
I didn't want to have to go before the HBC and all this kind of stuff. I backed off that because I do see
Right.
that it is different.
Well, it protects
Can I
us.
put one more thing in there we'd be willing to do that would help this even more? If we're allowed to let it scroll at a steady pace, we'll turn it off. It'll only be on during business hours, just like your sandwich sign. It will be out there, and when you get through, you take it and you go inside. It's the same thing with the LED sign, and it's off.
Absolutely.
You can't ride, you won't be able to ride down the road and see
Yeah,
it.
like that. I thought that was the idea in the beginning.
At the beginning.
Yeah, you know, but you just turn it off.
That's right.
But you let it like, hey, that's it.
All right,
I mean, that's it. End of conversation. We ain't got nothing else to talk about. I mean, why would we keep beating the dead horse? We done been by this road
That's
before.
right.
So we find out what you want, we told you what we can give, that's it.
Well, in
And
the,
that's PC. maybe we gotta meet with those guys. We got, you said you were gonna meet with, P&Z. You've already discussed it with P&Z, right? Or you haven't?
Not that particular document. I
Okay.
sent through what was the first original request from
Okay.
last time.
Okay.
Anything new will have to be sent through them.
Okay,
So
so you said this.
DNR first, right?
We'll go through, right, we'll go through DNR and then through.
Then go to
Basically,
the-
she's gonna give us a 15-day,
Yes.
then we go to the P&Z, then.
Planning
we go
zone,
back to
Judge.
us.
Okay. Well, when we get to, I mean, plans, I mean the P&Z.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it. That's it. I mean, that's what these people want in the beginning.
All right, in your proposal, and in your thing that's already gone to this, you define the message signs as those that change electronically by movement or rotation of panels or slats. Now, that to me is not what we
That's a
have.
billboard.
Well, you
But
have
this is
those.
like, I know the fairway sign and
Correct.
the one at
Yeah, you come to both because electronic can either be manual, like changing panels, or it can be lighted electronic change. And that's the thing, we looked that up and found that to be, it could be either way. So it's either whether it's a mechanical change or whether it's electronic light change, like where it's being the truck, it all falls in the same category as multi-message, because you're changing messages.
But, all right, I'm thinking of the Ameris Bank sign on Fifth Avenue, and I'm thinking of the road numbers. All right, are you telling me, I don't think that they rotate panels or slabs to change?
They don't, but they do change electronically.
That's right, so we need to include copy on the sign electronically.
Electronically.
But you've got electronically by movement of rotation of panels or slabs, that would not allow, but
Right.
the John was going to be a mirror sign.
And I'm not arguing your point. If that's what was typed in that is incorrect. It should read.
Electronically, comma.
Right. So somebody typing up that document may have left a comma out.
Okay, it's no more than a comma, it's the word by movement.
I understand, and the situation is you have two types. You have a mechanical change and an electronic change, and both would be addressed under the same as a
Well,
multi-business
it
sign.
needs to be electronic.
I agree with you 100%.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
You know, we're really talking a lot of different things. We're moving from one point to another point. And one of the things that we lawyers like to do is identify the issues. What are the issues? What do we have to deal with? And what do you have to decide? So when you leave here today and you know that you have to decide these issues, then you can know what your position is on anything in particular. So the way I see the issues that we have now, if I look at the historic district, issue number one is illumination. Do you want to leave it as it is, indirect lighting? Do you want to allow some other type of lighting, such as channel lighting? Do you want to let things flash, blink, or scroll in the historic district? Or do you want LEDs? So when you look at the historic district, you think about illumination. Do we want to leave it alone, indirect only? Do we want to allow some other type of lighting? Do we want flashing, blinking, scrolling lights in the historic district? And do we want LED lights in the historic district? So that's the way I see the illumination issue in the historic district. What do you want from an illumination standpoint? Then when you talk about banners, do you want to have loud banners in the historic district? And then the third issue in the historic district, do you want to allow the stick signs? So when you leave here and you're thinking about the historic district, think about illumination, what do you think is appropriate? And then, do you want the banners? Do you want the stick signs? So those are your defined issues in the historic district that you need to decide what do you want to have in the historic district. Then moving on outside the historic district, it seems like to me the real main issue there is the flashing, blinking, scrolling lights. What do you want to allow outside of the historic district, and do you want to, do something with flashing, blinking, scrolling lights, and as Bert has suggested, maybe leave that in with the idea of, redefining multiple message signs such that you can have changing sign faces, either electronically through the lighting or mechanically. And so those are where I see, those are the issues. both inside the historic district and outside the historic district. And, you know, what you need to decide is what each individual council member thinks is appropriate on those issues, and then hopefully we can reach some type of consensus to put something together to split the DNR. So, like I said, that's where I really see, if I define these issues and you can decide for yourself what do you think is most appropriate based upon the information you have and what you heard today, then we can workshop it again, after you respond to those issues and say, this is what I think, and
When you do that before the next workshop?
I would suggest that we have enough information, I think we know where council's coming from based on the previous meetings. Why don't we just go ahead and draft the ordinance and send it out to them to review it prior to the workshop? And then if y'all have comments on what we've drafted, or if you don't agree with what we've drafted, then let us know so that we can correct it before the workshop.
well, but the only problem with that there is, I mean, let's say if I can't draft anything until I know what
That's
y'all
right.
want.
Like
If I said show of hand, I'm not asking for a vote, but if I was just hypothetically saying, show me, you know, let's have a show of hands, who wants flashing, blinking, scrolling lights in the storage district? That's an issue that we have to know. Who wants that and who doesn't want that? Who wants stick signs, you know, in the historic district? Show me your hands. Then we'll know who wants stick signs. But I gotta have that information before I can do the ordinance.
Rob, you want us to send this back to you with some comments on it?
Sure, but I say, Chris, I think that, you know, if you look at those issues we just addressed, and you identify, do I want flashing, blinking, scrolling in the historic district? Do I want stick signs? Do I want banners? Do I want LEDs? Then I'll know exactly, you know, we'll get a consensus about where do you think you want to go with this, and I can draft something up.
Rob, why don't you send that out in an email?
I'll do
And they
that.
can simply respond yes, no, or make further comment.
I'd like to have the minutes from today's meeting accompany that, from the discussion, if that's okay, to kind of refresh our memory
I
with
would too.
what she had to say regarding those specific issues.
Oh, we all need that. It's a good idea.
Well, I would probably just send it to you in digital format because I won't,
Yeah,
those meeting minutes won't be verbatim.
okay.
And you're probably, so I can just send it out to you
That would,
electronically.
I think that would be helpful, because I'd like to kind of go back and rethink through some of her
Comments.
comments.
But I think that's a good idea. What I can do is just what I just did, outline, these are the issues that we need to address, we need to decide, and then let you respond, and then based upon the response I can get something drafted up. Assuming that we have some type of consensus.
Well, if we do any type of this message, multi-message signs, that, to me, that seems like that is part of the flashing, jumping, popping, whatever these are. It's just at a lower
That's right.
level. You know, she's already said she doesn't want that. So, but we can still move towards that. She also said we can send what we want, and they are advisory only. So, you know, I kind of like what Bert's saying, is to move this into thing in here. Now, the people that want the hardcore, moving, flashing bells and whistles, they won't get it in the historical district. But we can reach a happy medium with this multi-message sign. I'll play.
Well, that'll be another issue, I guess, is do you want multiple message signs in the historic district?
Right, that's another question.
Right.
Well, I think I do already.
Well,
I think that satisfies both sides.
I need to know what, you know, what, right now, you've got the compromise in this original thing was that you allow an LED sign, a light emitting diode may be permitted,
That's right.
in the commercial areas that are consistent with the local character of the neighborhood and the building. And it should be limited to 6 square feet.
And that's the one we
But
reviewed
what
the
we've
other
got-
night, right?
What?
That's what we had the public hearing on the
Yeah,
other night,
that's
yeah.
what we had
Yeah.
over here. But, so I need to know if that is by definition a multi-message sign.
Okay.
I need to know if that is a multi-message sign.
I think an LED, as described there, could be an LED sign, and it could be it could be a multiple message sign, just depending on how it's displayed. If it's just set and just has one message on it, never changes, then it's just an LED
Right.
sign.
Mhm.
If it changes, then it'd be a multiple message sign.
Bert, didn't you say that?
I gotta be excused, I got a 4 o'clock drop.
Okay,
Did you say the LED signs by their nature are multi-message signs?
Absolutely, by definition.
By definition, an LED sign is a multi-message sign because you can change it.
Diane?
I'm Darlene.
Darlene, I do that.
We'll meet after, Diane. Regarding the mayor's comment about he would be happy with the multi and historic district, that it's kind of a happy compromise. I
No,
disagree.
the message, the thing that Bert's talking about, not the LED.
Well,
The-
are you talking in the historic district commercial section
Uh-huh,
only?
yeah.
Well, then
Oh,
you got 3 commercial sectors. You got downtown commercial, neighborhood commercial,
General
general
business.
business, light industrial, 5, light industrial.
Well, I mean,
and-
within the historic district, we have all this, okay.
Well, there
Yeah,
And
and what
so-
we
won't be
did,
any RP, there won't be any residential, none of that.
what we did, and we were looking at revising the HPC manual, when we when we defined commercial areas and residential areas. Residential areas were R and RP, and the commercial areas were, NC on up.
Right.
And that's how we try to separate those out.
So when you're describing these signs for the more commercial part of town versus the more residential, you are referring to those 3 categories. Because RP and P and R are separate.
That's
And then you
right.
have your neighborhood commercial, your light industrial, and your commercial. When you're
And
lumping
general
those two,
business,
and
there's
general business.
5.
Yeah, it's
I think.
wholesale light,
Those are
HI,
all
and SA.
Yeah, when you see
What
the
is-
zoning map, though, I think you only have, downtown commercial,
This is,
Community
if you want to
commercial.
look at that, I want that
I think
back
we
with
have
you,
3
you're welcome to
downtown.
read that. That's what
or 2.
Burr presented the other night that we had the public hearing on.
Take it tomorrow, and you'll write it
You have general
No, you
business,
can-
commercial downtown, and
Or
neighborhood
just scan
commercial.
it and email me.
Well, what are, do we have in the historic district any light industrial? And do we have anything other than those 3?
We have light
Did we
industrial.
zone out light industrial, heavy industrial, other commercial?
So all we got.
Oh, that was the
We
old
have
mill.
3.
The mill,
Okay.
you took
Well,
that
the
out.
ordinance references 5.
The ordinance references 5, so
Yep,
that's
okay.
an error.
That's right. we changed it.
But there will not be any in RP or residential, Darlene.
Right, but I think that when you stated that you felt that everybody was in agreement and okay with that, I think that is an error. I
So,
don't
Rob,
think
you
that's
can send out
accurate,
an
because
email
for
to
one,
ask those
that's a blanket statement, and I know I'm not appreciative of it. So I know that that's a little broad-based in your statement, that there may be some, or a few, might be more accurate.
I'll take that back,
Okay, I just think,
and we'll,
it's just always dangerous to say.
I didn't mean it the
blanket.
way you just designed it.
Okay.
I'll take that back.
Okay.
Well, I'm concerned about that sentence describing multi-message, so I want you to fix that.
That's right.
And, I'm also concerned about this. And, I'm thinking about the Walgreens and the CVS. I don't personally object to. I think that they're okay. I'm happy to know they're not scrolling, they're changing. But, I would have a problem if those signs were on Main Street in downtown commercial. They are neighborhood commercial. But if those signs were, at the corner of Main Street, like at the Mexican restaurant, that corner, that would bother me, right now. My opinion is, I don't make up my mind completely, but this is what I want to know. How could you, let's just use the Mexican restaurant, because I can picture that in my mind. How could they put up an electronic sign? Where would they put it?
They could put it on the outside of the
They
building.
would put it on the outside of the building.
Or they can hang it in the window like some people are doing now.
Right.
But that is, what is that, community commercial?
Got downtown commercials. That's what that is.
Well, that's,
You got downtown commercial, neighborhood commercial,
well,
and general
downtown would
business.
even be more so business on.
Well, it is, but I mean, it's very densely populated there, the buildings are small. It's,
What if every business had one on it?
what,
What if every business had one?
Yeah, what if every business put one up?
I mean,
There's a reason that Ms. Burns said that you could quickly lose the integrity. What seems to be okay in the beginning, as soon as that Pandora's box is opened and things are changed, you just can't undo it, it's a mess. And
Okay.
you lose what you've spent 25 years plus the years preparing for it. And I understand you have a sign, you like it, it's the new, it's the technology, I get all of that. And I am pro-business, but I also understand this is very fragile, and we've worked very hard, we as in the community, not me as a person and whoever, just a few of us in this room, to understand, even though sometimes we disagree with the limits it puts on us, that we abide by it. I mean, schools function because they have rules and guidelines. Children and people and businesses and staff, we all have that because it's the best for the masses in the long term. And that's what really concerns me when you start changing and setting precedents by
Well,
allowing touch.
And I would like to comment.
You know, Al, let me answer you.
Okay.
We have people, and I can name them to you, that won't move their commercial businesses inside the historical district. And I'm sorry to have to tell you that. There's some people I'd love to have in the commercial district. It would be excellent.
Exactly.
But you know what,
Because we, wait, Julie,
Okay.
because we just haven't moved with the times. We're not asking them to just throw our essentially historical district away. We're asking for a little flexibility so we don't hurt our business people. That business tax that comes in here, you know, because it's gonna be just reversed. We got the businesses in here because people cared to clear, people cared to do it right. People invested that were commercial people to make it what it is. But when I got people not wanting to come into the historical, I got two buildings that we sitting vacant. People don't want to come into the historical. We don't want all this. We don't want all these restrictions. I don't say throw the baby out with the bathwater. I just say, can't we all come to it? It seems like every time we get with the historical district, it's their way or the highway. There is no flexibility. And there needs to be some flexibility on this.
Well, Mr.
I'm not
Mayor,
excited, I'm
yeah.
not mad, I just talk.
But Mr. Mayor, in every neighborhood, in every section, there are guidelines that takes the flexibility and stops it at a certain point.
Okay.
We have the same thing that everybody else does. Ours are different, but it's the same. You have rules that go this far and you can't go any farther. Okay, fine. You can live by those rules, great. Come be part of us. We have worked, it works. The buildings used to be 75% empty. I am sorry that there are some that don't understand it, but a lot of that is lack of education and not being explained the rules and the guidelines. There are some that just don't want to follow the rules and guidelines. If you go out by the 75, there are rules that you can only do certain things. I couldn't put a strip club out there or a tattoo parlor, I don't think. So if I had someone that wanted to do something or whatever there might be, I'm sure there are things that couldn't go in there. So saying that we have rules and regulations and we're non-flexible, I think is inaccurate. I think it's disrespectful. And I think every neighborhood, every section has the rules and guidelines.
And I would like to make a comment for that too. We have worked in every way. And as far as Miss Mariana not being able to see those signs, here's the thing. They'll be off. After business hours, they go off. That is in itself something that no one else does. And I beg to differ on CBS. They do have a scrolling, flashing sign at the bottom of it that does scroll. It does flash, and it does change. It doesn't just stay up there. So the point is this. I agree with the mayor 100%. We have tried every way we can to try to get along with the HBC and with the historical district. What is happening here is the majority, and I guarantee you, the majority of the people that are business owners and people that live anywhere, even people that live in the historical district themselves, are not for the stringent guidelines that these few people won't wish to put upon other people. This is property that I bought, that I paid for, that I've renovated, that I've got money invested in. I've got money invested in a business. All I'm asking for is that we compromise to allow us to advertise, not only me, this is not just for me. This is for the other people that may want to come downtown, like the mayor said. If they knew that there was ways to get by and have something that was flexible, if there was flexibility, they'd move down there. And I don't remember 75% of the buildings. I've been here since '77. I used to come through here, and I don't remember 75%. Not me.
Well over 50%.
I don't
But
remember
on
that.
another,
And I've been around here longer than you
You
have.
talked
Well,
about
I've got another
what
thing
you
I gotta
can,
do
what you want
Okay.
to do.
So I'm gonna have to leave you, but Rob, send that
When
email
you-
out, and I'll be more than happy to respond back, and we'll go from there,
I
okay?
think it's,
I just want to point out that the LED signs are already legal inside of business windows, so all the people downtown could do that if they chose, but all of them haven't. So more than likely, they're not going to put up big signs if it were to pass, because they haven't already.
Okay, so we can expect a new one from you? maybe?
yes, and I think what I'll also do, Mariana, is I'll get with Bert, and in that email, I'll also try to make a change to the multiple message signs, so they can, see if we can get that a little bit more massaged, so you can take a
Well,
look.
we need to do that.
Right. So if we
And
do
yet the
decide.
wording that we would put in the 7.17A.
Right, and that way, if you decide to go in that direction, we'll have something that you can look at to see what it'll look like. Okay?
Well, I didn't mean to be out of line. I was just trying to get us all involved and try to work out something that we can all, something to live with. I guess I got.
I don't think you were, quite frankly. That's my
You'll
opinion,
get
and I'm
there.
entitled to that
Y'all-
too.
you all-
I can't hear myself live.
Has anybody at Lucretia surveyed the business owners in the historic district to find out really how they feel about this? I talked to several business people downtown last week, and they didn't even know there was anything being considered about changing signs, and they liked downtown the way it is. They did not
Where have they
want to
been?
see it go to.
That's a good idea.
Well, they have a right to their
They
opinion.
do.
I
And
understand. Where have they been though, if they don't know anything about
We've
it?
gone down and gone business to business, and
We don't
Well,
find
you
the
missed
same
some.
thing.
And I don't know how.
well,
We'll
owners
talk.
weren't there all the time, you know.
I think we're done.
We're done.
I've never seen anything on this.
Are we started?
Where'd I get Diane? I don't know. I know who called in.
I know.
Happens to me too, Mayor.
Does-
I
Did
I
get
was
that
all
right?
getting names mixed
I
up.
must look like a Diane, I don't like, a lot of people.
All right, I think you want to adjourn our meeting there?
Well, I think two of us are already gone. And
Three out of four.
Hey, we still got four. If you want to talk some more,
I'm through.
I'm all watched.
If we could get a word in edgewise, yeah, but I guess we might as well adjourn.
Okay, then we are adjourned.
Did you want to say something?
No.
We're adjourned.